So, Dr. Rob, you just recorded a new podcast, and this will be a little
I
teaser.
did.
Tell me about it.
Well, the podcast we do is called Sex, Love, and Addiction, and we have tons of people who listen. And this was with a woman who is really on the cutting edge of brain science related to addiction. And she's actually done a TED Talk or TEDx talk. Her name is Dr. Jessica Higgins. And you can,
Evelyn Higgins.
oh, that's right, Dr. Evelyn Higgins. I'm sorry, we have two Higgins.
Yeah.
Dr. Evelyn Higgins, thank you. And she talked about the ability that science now has to see biomarkers to actually see whether someone has the likelihood to become an addict, to the degree to which their addiction. This is the folks who say, this medication you can take, it will help, and this medication
Yes.
won't. And so they're
Yes.
really looking at the molecular level, if you will, of addiction. And she really gets something that is so hard for the rest of us, which is this is biological. It really is. And she talked about we don't discriminate against people with cancer, we don't discriminate against people who have diabetes, but this mental health chronic condition that we call addiction, it just gets thrown in the basket of pull yourself by the bootstraps and what's wrong with them. And they have a brain problem. And we don't get upset with people who have depression, but and she was talking a lot about what we call epigenetics, which is the expression of our genes and how our early life experiences lead to some things are wired in, but they may not express themselves, like depression and others. So just the whole thing, I think, is fascinating. We did do a podcast. Hopefully it's going to be up in a day or two or soon, Dr. Evelyn Higgins, and it's going to be called The Neurobiology of Addiction. And yeah, I would just like to spend a few months in her clinic just soaking up everything she has to teach. She's amazing, really. And they do treatment.
I'm very happy to hear that it went well because I was excited about that one. So I'm
I
excited
want to
about
say
lots of
one more
things, but
thing
I
about
was
that,
excited about
working
that.
with her,
Hmm.
that she said that when she can show people the biomarkers and where the actual addictive tendencies, all of that, she said people cry because they finally, for the first time, realize this isn't my fault. This is, dad was an alcoholic and grandma was mentally ill, and this is how my genetic problems express themselves. And they cry because all their lives they've been thinking, I'm a bad person, I don't care. We discussed how it's particularly difficult in my world because partners, how could it not be so personal? How could it not be you did this to me? And that's true. But the drive to do it, the underlying issues, are much more powerful than what we see on the surface. And you're right, Tammy, you've talked about this. The symptom, she talked about this, the addiction is a symptom. It's the stop above the water in an iceberg, but what she's interested in is all the stuff that's underneath and how that can be addressed so that the addiction is more manageable. So anyway, very cool stuff. Sex, Love, and Addiction. Dr. Evelyn Higgins on the neurobiology of addiction. She was great. So I know we have questions from last
We
week.
have lots, and I
Okay.
sent you an email with those. So we're going to start with.
Okay.
Did you find your email
I
first?
will
I'll give
pull
you
it
a
up.
second.
Sure. You got it.
And you're going to start with number 63 as the tag first.
Okay. Well,
Tell me
hold on
when
a
you're almost
second.
ready. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have my last one sorry.
I
My
just
last one is
emailed
at
it to you.
4:54. Oh, okay.
No,
Well,
I
why don't you want to
emailed
start with
you.
one we
Okay.
have now, and then hopefully that will show up in my email while we're talking?
Let me just hit resend because let me see. Maybe I'll forward this to you via.
Yeah, text is good. Probably
I'm
better.
texting you the first one. I'll text the next one to you.
Great.
But there you go. There's your text. Okay, the first piece we did. So you're going to get them one at a time. Okay.
Yeah, I
I
got
am a
it.
betrayed partner from a long-term relationship who is no longer with my ex, who is a sex addict in denial and undiagnosed. How can I do the work on my end and be able to trust again? I suspect on occasion that my ex was a sex addict, but there were so many things that did make him seem trustworthy. I have always been bad at picking mates. None of have ever had addiction issues before, though. At this point, I simply don't trust myself to be able to pick someone who will not emotionally hurt me.
So is there a question? I think I know what the question might be, but why don't you throw a few at me from that story,
How do I
Tammy? Because I
work
think
on my end to be able to trust again? That was the question that's in like the fourth line.
Okay. Well, these are sort of the similar question, which is, so I have a couple of responses to this, and this is like the third time I've talked about this today. I have an idea in pro dependence called twos don't marry sevens. And what that means is back in the day when Blake Edwards was doing a movie called 10, Tammy might
I
remember that,
remember that.
we were in a sexist way, we were calling, numbering women. You know, this
Yeah.
woman's a 10, this woman's an 8, depending on her looks. And I think about that in terms of psychology, which is, you know, there are some of us who are very stable and really, you know, healthy backgrounds and really have it together. And we're kind of like 8s. And then there are the 2s and the 3s, more like us, Tammy, who people who struggle and have addictions and relationship issues. We're trying our best, but we have, Lord knows we have stuff. And I will say, you know, that the people who are 8s who really have it together, they look at us folks and they say, oh my God, they're way too much drama. I wouldn't go out with that person.
Mhm.
So the really, really healthy people are not going to want to go out with us. And we look at those really healthy people, and some of you know this, and we say, oh, they're boring. Where's the excitement? Where's the drama? So on some level, I think that we are always going to pick someone who's similar in our psychological and emotional abilities. So the idea that I'm going to pick someone who has it all together is probably not going to happen. My best suggestion always is date them long enough to know that they can self-reflect. They have been through therapy, they've been through 12 step. Here is my number one. If you want to be my friend or you want to be involved with me, you can hurt me, you can let me down, but can you come back and own your part? Can you say, I know we had a fight today and, you know, but I want to know this is the part I did, or because otherwise I can't be in a relationship, which what I'm saying is you may be a 4 and you're going to get involved with a 5 or 3, but make sure that they can be accountable and they're interested in growing. So that when you work on problems, you can each have a part. If you both want to grow, you can both go to therapy, both go to 12 step. So I need to date someone who is honest about who they are and the challenges they have. And believe me, if you went out with me, I would tell you, hopefully not on the first date, but I would absolutely tell you, I think you're right to not trust yourself around your choices. And so, like any of us, getting feedback is extremely important. I would not date someone with my history unless I dated them with friends, unless I dated them with my family, unless I had a lot of feedback on other people saying what they thought of them. If I have a real history of problematic dating, I might go to SLAA, Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, or one of those places where they concretely work on helping you build a community that you can turn to. So, in other words, if I were involved in that program, I would say, hey, Mary, will you take my calls after I go on a date? And after the date, I say to Mary, okay, the date was like this, and they were this, and that. And then Mary gets to say, well, I know your history and you don't get to see that person again. So in other words, my emotional feelings about this is great. I want to go forward. I mean, no, they're a heroin addict. I know they're still married, but they're so nice to me. You know, that's kind of how we work, and we don't see that we're blind to the problems, but other people aren't. Other people who know our history and aren't involved with this person will give us far more information. The question is, will we listen? And that is the hardest part. Oh, I love them. They're so great. They're so wonderful. Well, I don't see them clearly. I make bad choices. So being accountable, having other people have a view or insight into what you're doing, the person you date and you say, I don't want them to meet my friends, or I don't think they get along with my family, that's already a problem. So yeah, you're going to meet someone who's imperfect, and so are you. But together, working on it, I think you're going to grow faster together than you will as individuals. So yeah, that's how
I
it will go.
appreciate you talking about having more people involved in helping pick. And you talked before. We are meant to be pair bonded. Dr. Stan Tatkin talks about, when we're together, we do better. So we do. But I think trust yourself to build a friend network, because if that can be a primary problem if you don't have friends that can, like if it's all the attention is on the relationship and then you get out of the relationship and you have no friends and you look for another relationship, that's a problem. You want to have that circle of friends who actually knows you, and that you can build trust with them. And you won't pick all your friends perfectly either. Everybody gets burned every now and then, but working on those, building those relationships helps teach us how to do it in a primary relationship too.
But
So
let
don't
me
give
add
up
one
is
more
my
thing.
point. Go ahead.
Make a list of things that are important to you. You know, I want
Yes.
someone who laughs at my jokes. I want someone who answers the phone when I call them. I want someone who's sober, has an apartment, has a job. You know, what are the things that are important to you? And then maybe what are the things you don't want? You know, well, this person smokes, or this person is still, whatever it is, you get to say, you know, these are the make and breaks and these aren't. And by the way, that's another thing about having an accountability group in your life. I know for me, a lot of people said, you can't date them, you can't date them. But then I found myself with someone I was probably going to just toss away. And they said, no, you should date that person. And we've been together 22 years. So they made a good decision, but I could not have, I wanted to run from the right person and move toward the wrong people. And that's just who I am. So I completely relate to it. I just had to get a lot of support in making those decisions.
I did that with a list, and it was short. It was the non-negotiables. They will be, they won't be. And non-smoker was an issue, but I didn't settle on one of those. Those were my non-negotiables. So I didn't go, well, and I've been married even longer than you have been to a person who is the good balance for
Wonderful. I
me.
know your
So yeah, he
husband. He's a
is.
great
Yes.
guy. And he is a balance
Oh,
for you. He's so calm and relaxed. And
my sister
no,
says the same thing. She goes, he's such a good helper for you to
me
maintain my mental
too.
health. So yeah. So okay. So the next one. So now we're on to 64. I texted it to you. Hi, thank you for your services. I'm ADHD addict, and my partner always tells me that my empathy is broken, and I believe her. I'm trying to do everything she asks, but I still fail, and somehow I feel tired all the time. And I guess it shows as lack of desire to change. I don't know what to do anymore. And I'm completely desperate because I really want to change. I'm also going to meetings and I'm looking for a sponsor. How can I build my empathy and give her the love that I know that I feel, but I'm unable to apparently show? There's exercises for me to do and change myself.
Well, the first question I have, Tammy, is just caught me. We can certainly answer the bigger questions, but I'm tired all the time. And it shows as a lack of desire to change. And I'm just wondering what the person means, because when I hear that, I think about depression. I think about, I remember when I was stressed, I was tired all the time. I didn't have the energy to really work through things. I just kind of wanted to walk away. So I would be curious to what degree there are underlying issues related to being tired all the time. I don't know what that means. I know I'm more tired than I was 10 years ago, but that's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
I am acutely aware of this issue because I've worked with so many men who, and I assume that you're a man, you may not be, who struggle so much with how to make peace with a woman they've harmed. It's not that I want to write about homosexuals or other folks. It's just that men do not understand what a woman goes through when she's been cheated on. We just don't get it. We think flowers and candy, and I'm sorry. And so I wrote a book called Out of the Doghouse, sorry, Out of the Doghouse, basically a cheating man's guide to healing a broken relationship. So how does a man who's cheating find a way to understand, gain empathy, compassion, and have insight into what is going on with that woman they're involved with? We also teach a work group on Out of the Doghouse, because it's one thing to read it, but it's another thing to do a workbook and talk to other people. And by the way, this is the first course that everyone wants to sign up for, because they're not necessarily interested in dealing with their addiction, but they're very interested in making up, having their spouse forgive them. But this is not a book about forgiveness, because I don't think that forgiveness is something we should seek. I think being a better person is something that we should seek, and forgiveness may or may not come along with that. But what I am interested in is how a man can treat a woman with dignity and respect for and understanding the pain that she has gone through, and giving her the space and the support to be able to rebuild a relationship. And yeah, we're not empathy. Listen, if I can go out and do things that hurt my partner and know I'm doing it, empathy is not my strong point. However, and I think empathy is kind of split in some ways for those of us who are addicts, but you can learn how, and you can learn, and you'll know from her. And that's exactly what I'm teaching. And by the way, Tammy, did you know that the book on men who cheat on women and need to fix it is my most popular book? Because apparently a lot of men out there who are struggling, or a lot of women who are so pissed that they bought the book and they threw it at their partners and say, do this. So anyway, thanks, Tammy. Do you have anything else you want to add?
Well, I do. I put in the chat. So Dr. Todd Love did a webinar, but it also did a podcast with Dr. Rob on ADHD. And ADHD is a real thing. And men who struggle with ADHD, their life expectancy is shortened by 13 years. What I read when I read that I'm exhausted all the time was the not being able to settle and complete things that can leave us exhausted. So I kind of wondered about from that standpoint. So I would seek help from someone who understands addiction and also ADHD for the guys that come to our treatment program, you know, if there's a suspicion of something like that, there's a mental health professional that gets consulted with that can, you know, can diagnose that and help get treatment for those things. But yeah, and on some levels, you know, I mean, and I've shared this before, I've got lists all over the place. I cleaned up a bunch of them today. But it's one of those things where I had to find tools to be able to help me be successful. Highly recommend the Out of the Doghouse for men who've been caught cheating. And there are some guys that go to that literally, I mean, it's like splitting hairs, it's still betrayal, but that have cheated versus have compulsive cheating over
Right.
decades and 30. So both people are a fit. So anyway.
Yeah, thanks, Tammy. I wrote it not just for men who are sex addicts, but because no
Mhm,
man I've ever met understands what a woman goes through when he's cheating, and that's
mhm,
universal. So thank you for
mhm.
that, Tammy.
Okay, next question. I'm a betrayed partner in a female same-sex couple. We're bisexual and we've been together for 25 years. We were swingers for much of our relationship, and then she started to see men mainly only alone for the last 7 years. Even with this lifestyle, she has had 50 plus infidelities, and I recently found out she's having unprotected sex for money. Is this normal for addict to think their acting out was due to their physical needs for not being met in a relationship? 3 months of recovery, essay meetings, and therapy.
Do you want to start? I'm still reviewing this.
Okay, so you know,
Mm.
on some level, a betrayed partner is a betrayed partner, whether you're in a
Mhm.
same-sex relationship or not. You know, I hear this all the time from, you know, particularly from male addicts who want to be in a swinging or, you know, they want to have an open relationship, but they, even with the boundaries different, they still don't live within them. So on some
Right.
level, what I hear is an addict going, you know, no matter what the boundaries are, I don't want to live within those. And I'm sorry that she has put her health and yours at risk with, you know, unprotected sex. Get an STD test, please. But you know, every addict's going to go, yes, my addiction is due to my physical needs not being met. No, that it's the whole in the soul. It's got something to do with, you know, what's untreated, you know, the wounds here, not, you know, it's not about the sex. Sex addiction isn't about sex. Dr. Rob?
I am so sorry that you have been with someone for so long who you trusted and believed in, and you went on adventures together, and now they're out doing it by themselves. And I agree with Tammy said, which is sometimes we fit our lifestyle around our problem, and then we're swinging and we're doing this and we're doing that, but that's not a problem because we fit our lifestyle around it. It becomes integrated like swinging. The problem is that maybe for one of us it's more of an addictive behavior, and so when you move away from the swinging, it or even during the swinging, there's all this other stuff going on that you don't know about. So there are certain partners who will agree to things that they're okay with. There are a lot of partners who agree to things they don't feel good about. But what's shocking for them is I went along with all this stuff. I did what I thought was right, and I didn't find out about all the rest of this. So, and I've run women's programs, and I think I created, honestly, the first women's program in the country for compulsive sexual behavior. And that was before that other place started one, Tammy. And, uh,
I
and,
know.
you know, what I see here, and I can't diagnose anyone from a distance, but I see a deeply troubled woman, and it's either trauma related or sexual abuse related or personality related. But this is really one of those, um, the tip of the iceberg is what you see. I have a feeling that this is, you know, she's moved from swinging and then she's seeing men, but she's with you as a woman, and then she's putting you at risk, and then she's been 50 people, and now she's selling. I mean, this is not just a sex addict, this is a troubled person that has a lot of stuff going on underneath. And I say that because it's not, you know, first of all, how do I say? There's just so many problems in so many different areas. And I know sex addicts act out all over the place, but there's something that feels to me not right about this, really not right about this. So, is it normal for addicts to think their acting out was due to their physical needs not being met in a relationship? Yes, sure. But that's not true. Because if my physical needs were not met in my relationship, I could have another relationship. I could leave you. I could, you know, ask you to swing with me. I mean, how many needs are you really going to meet? And again, I think this is the person saying, oh, it's my needs that are the problem. It's the fact that I want to swing that's the problem. And boy, do we addicts love blaming you for our problem. Well, if you were just a little more and a little of this. So I agree with Tammy. I don't think the sexual orientation has anything to do with it. It's betrayal is betrayal. And I think you've been very, very caring and open to trying to have a lifestyle that worked for both of you. I think you're finding out that there's much more than that. And this betrayal is very profound. My question is, how long, is this woman in your bed? Are you still having sex? What kind of, I don't see anything about therapy. Uh, what are you doing to get the support you need, which is really concerns me. I'm glad she's going to meetings. I'm glad she's got some help, but if I were you, I'd be in a complete crisis over all of this. Now I'm hearing about not just women, but men. Now I'm hearing about prostitution. Now, I really hope, and Tammy probably can drop you a note or two in there about support for you. And I don't care whether you're a group of heterosexual women or homosexual, it doesn't matter. These are women who understand betrayal and they want to bond with you and support you as they have been supported. So I can't encourage you enough to find support groups online. And there may be some S-anon type groups for for partners, and maybe, in other words, there are 12-step support groups and all that stuff for partners as well. So um, I don't know why, but for some reason, I get this feeling that this person is blaming themselves a little bit or
Mm.
blame's being put on them. And I got to tell you, this is not about you. And it's such a long time together. By the way, to you heterosexual people, look, you come and say all the time, I've been in a 25-year relationship. I've been in a 20-year relationship. I just found out. I didn't know. Well, here it is right here. It doesn't really matter orientation. She's a very broken person.
Well, and I actually was thinking how often we hear from heterosexual couples where he's acted out with men and they're wondering about all of the partners are left wondering about all of that as well. So yeah, very, very challenging situation, but there is support for each and both of you. My email, Tammy, TAMI at seekingintegrity.com, if you'd like some more resources. Okay, so now we're going to go to number 65, and we did the first part of it. We're going to do the second part. I heard your 101 podcast yesterday. Thank you. I have been in a destructive off and on thing with someone for 10 years. I have not
Okay, hold on,
slept with
Tammy.
him.
I am lost. I'm so sorry. I have
It's number 65.
6:14 p.m. during a weekly
No,
check with
look
my
at, are
partner.
you looking at image 6665?
It's so funny. Oh,
That's the number. Yeah, I'm giving you the 65 is the last two digits of the image that I sent.
I don't have numbers like that. All I have is times.
Yes, you
So if you give me a
do.
time.
I'm sending this to you again. And then,
Okay,
but
sorry,
my
folks.
time is different than your time. That's the challenge. So it's at the sit.
Oh,
It's at,
thank you. Okay.
yes. So it's
Oh,
anonymous
okay.
attendee. Okay. Now you got
Right.
it.
I didn't understand the
Okay.
beginning was related to the other, but okay, I got it
Yes.
now.
Okay. I heard your 101 podcast yesterday. Thank you. I've been in a destructive off and on thing with someone for 10 years. I have not slept with him all these years because I'm constantly betrayed and then pulled back in. But it is very sexual overall, and I believe I am definitely a love addict and perhaps a sex addict because I objectify him, and I think lust underlays the whole dynamic. I have not been able to block him. I'm in SLAA and Al-Anon and have been thinking I am addicted to him. Can you please explain the concept that we are not addicted to a person, but rather we are addicted to the process? I have believed I am addicted to him, so I am addicted. So am I addicted to behaviors in the process, but not him? The concept is helpful, but trying to understand. I hear this actually often. So if you can clarify love addiction, because I go back to that whole piece of it, but also, people being addicted to another person.
Well, first of all, I don't think anyone would be addicted to a person. Even as a sex addict, I'm not addicted to their body parts, right? I'm addicted to the whole process of looking, searching, hunting, fantasy, ritual, and the acting out. Um, so, first of all, you said a couple other things. Am I addicted to the behavior? I don't know that anyone's addicted to the behavior around these issues. I think that people are addicted to the feelings that they get in these situations. And, if you grow up with enough betrayal, combined with love, you're going to learn that love is betrayal and betrayal is love. So, and that goes to the last question, by the way. I don't think so. I have a rule in my relationships and my family today, which is no drama. And I don't know why. I don't work with you. I don't know why this is the case for you. I don't know why you have this compulsion to go back and back again to someone who's hurt you, but I think it has something to do with what you learned to tolerate growing up and how you grew up. So, um, uh, the idea, I guess I'm going to go back a little bit. There are people that I might date that other people never would. And that's because I grew up in certain circumstances. And when I meet that person, everybody else says, oh, I'd never go out with that person. But I don't even see the warning signs because I grew up in a situation like that. And then I'm in a love relationship where there are all these problems that I wasn't able to see because I was blind to them. And you may be in one of those situations where you got deeply involved with someone and you didn't see them clearly because of how you grew up or what your history is, or because you're so desperate to be loved that it's more important to you to be in that connection of being loved or have that feeling of being loved rather than actually being with this person. So let me just talk about love addiction real quick because Tammy brought that up. I think love addiction is graduate school for sex addicts. Love addiction is graduate school for sex addicts. Sex addicts are interested in body parts. If you get aroused, if you desire me, if you look over your shoulder and if you want me, if you I'm paying you and you say how amazing I am. I'm addicted to the sexual piece, what you look like, and our interaction within that and how it feeds me. Love addicts are more interested in having the experience of love rather than sexual intensity. They desperately want to feel love. They want this emptiness inside them to be filled up by someone who adores them. Who doesn't? The problem is that what I said is a problem of discernment, which means the person who's looking for love can become so desperate in their search for love that the first person who comes along or the first experience that feels like it's a fit, they jump right in because they see that person as an object, not a sexual object, but as a love object. So, in other words, I'm not really looking at who you are. I'm not really looking at what you enjoy. I'm not really looking at the fit. I just love how I feel when I'm with you. And then I join you because I love how I feel when I'm with you. And then I realize, well, you're not the person I thought you were at all. And that has to do with when we are looking for that intensity and that bonding that comes with love and romance, that's more important to us than actually looking at who the person is. And then when that goes away, because that eventually goes away, we look at this person and we say, why am I with them? Why did I pick them? How was I making that decision? And it has more to do with the emptiness inside of me and the desire to fill it up with love and a person than it actually does with my liking that person or my feeling or knowing who that person is. The other part, Tammy, though, I'd love you to talk about um, I'm betrayed, pull back in. Oh, the inability to cut someone off. I can't block them, which I think you can. But can you talk
No,
about a
I
little
think
bit
it's I
about
emotionally I can't let go. To me, that's all about I can't bring myself to doing it, even though I'm in this swirl.
10
So
years?
mhm.
Yeah, so I'm deeply sad because you've taken 10 years that could have been creating a home and a loving situation, a foundation of life with someone, and you've been chasing the unavailable. You know, we talk about intermittent reinforcement as therapists, and let me tell you what that means very quickly. If I was playing the slots in Vegas and it paid off every single time, I would be bored and I wouldn't play. If the slot machine never paid off, I'd be frustrated on losing all my money and I would never play. But if that slot machine pays off intermittently, I will chase it forever. And believe me, they have all the algorithms in Vegas to see exactly how much you need to win in order to keep you playing. It can be like that in our love relationships where we just get enough of something that feels wonderful and we'll chase that forever, even though it isn't consistent. Like a drug addict, we chase the idea of what we're having when the reality of what we're in is not meeting our needs at all. Um, and you need help from other people, by the way. You're not going to figure this out on your own. SLAA for sure. Tammy, other thoughts about this? I know we have a
Well,
lot of
and
questions
I
today.
hope that, leaning into the SLAA, but also get it. We talked a little bit before about, if I'm looking for a relationship, what would be the criteria? And I would invite you to write that list, and be really focused of, if I visualize myself in 2 years, not right now, in 2 years in a relationship that is really good and healthy, and a partnership for me, what would that person, what would it be like, and it isn't about what they look like physically. It really isn't,
Who? Who would they be?
yeah, yes, that's a yes. Who would they be? Their real self. And then I would line up that list with what you're dealing with when you're saying, you can't trust him. I was like, man, I mean,
Right.
I know that Rob and I both can trust our spouses. We do, we absolutely do, to the core. They'll go to the mat with us, and to have that is incredibly important, because you've got somebody that, well, we don't have sex, I'm really, I'm highly attracted, but it's always that elevated, it's kind of like you're getting, I just love the dopamine, I like being so excited about this, but it's not safe, and that's a real roller coaster, but it's not also real. And a real relationship, is somebody that, you can be bored walking around the block with and still like it, So I mean, it's like, it's different, but it's not that high dopamine, high chaos all the time, which I think can be something of its
Addictive.
own. Yeah,
The
really
excitement,
chasing.
the intensity, the can I keep them? Can I make them love me again? That is all. Can I prove myself to make sure what's wrong with me that they don't? It's also very much about us, what I need, what I want, who am I right? As opposed to, is this the right situation for me? By the way, one of my original educators, a man by the name of Michael Alvarez, said that a really good relationship should be just one notch above boring. Most evenings, I don't know about Tammy's house, it's a little routine. There's dinner, there's this, there's dogs, there's TV, whatever it is. Once in a while, something really great happens. That's amazing. Once in a while, something really sad happens. That's very sad. But mostly, I want it to just be kind of like this. And I see relationships like this. I think that's not a good one, because drama is something I want to see on a stage, but it's not something I want to live. Ooh, Tammy, I like that. Drama.
I
I have to
know.
write that one down.
I know, I am. I'm writing it down right now. Okay. All right. So we have bunches of questions. So we're going to go to
Okay.
now, it's number 66 on the image that I just sent you. Do you see it?
Oh, we're still in text. Okay. I thought we'd moved
Yes.
on
I
to.
got two more. So that's why we got a
Okay.
bunch stacking up. So thank you for all you do. Just wondering if there is a rough draft of boundaries that is available somewhere. Know you need them, as we've heard you say it multiple times, but just feeling lost on precise ones to give to the essay. Thanks in advance. So can
So
I start with
Tammy,
this one?
well, I was just gonna say we teach this, don't we, in the Betrayed Partners?
Yes, I was going to say we
Go
have a
ahead.
betrayed partners work group that talks about boundaries. But it's also like, what I hear is, I give this to the addict, and it's talking to the addict or friends or whomever about, these are my boundaries for my health. It isn't about you and you have to do these things. It's like, for me, these are my needs: physical, emotional, financial, spiritual. And as part of that, if you're unable to navigate and maintain that, then there could be consequences, like, sleeping in the other room, or even more. But it's
Right.
not because it's because I value myself to have a healthy boundary. So I wanted to flip that. So, you've talked, Dr. Rob, about, domestic violence is never okay on either side. So, but other than that, it really is what, if think about from those four perspectives, what do you need? That would be how you set up your boundaries. So, and there are some good resources on our site, that talk about this, as well. And there's podcasts and things, but the work group starts again March 1st. It's coming up. Angela Spearman does a great job, 6-week course. All of our work groups are live facilitated. They're not just watching a video or reading a book, and they really will give you that foundation and support and peer connection to guide you through the process.
Well, and I hate to keep you waiting until March 1st, but I reviewed that curriculum. There's a whole week on boundaries. There's a whole discussion about boundaries, just learning. There's a workbook, there's all kinds of stuff. But anyway, I want to go back to some of to be very concrete. So a boundary with an essay would be something like, And I think it's what Tammy said, you know, for example, if you act out and you tell me, um, we're going to be okay, it's going to be terrible, I'm going to be angry, whatever. But my boundary is, if you don't tell me, then I may not want to be with you, or you may, in other words, what is your boundary around how much time do you spend together? What is your boundary around what you need in terms of communication or honesty? Or so it's, as Tammy said, it's really about, so boundaries, let me just think about, so we work on boundaries in treatment. We actually have a whole session with partners while an addict isn't seeking integrity, talking about boundaries. And they are the boundaries that a partner has to set. And they are things like, this is, I don't want you to come over at these times. I do want you to come over those times. You have to be going to this many meetings. You have to be working with our therapist. You have to, and it isn't about, this is what you have to do. It's about, this is what will make me feel safe and me feel comfortable. Now, it may be you have to go do that, but it isn't because I'm wanting you can do whatever you want. But in order for me to feel safe in this relationship, I need us to have a meeting every night and talk about what's going on with us. I need us to go to couples therapy on this regular basis. I need to see you going to 3 meetings a week so that I can feel safe. And the metaphor I use all the time, is always that that boundaries are like a tent. If you have a tent and there's a zipper in it, but having no boundaries is the zipper's on the outside and anybody can come along and say, hey, what's going on? And walk right into your tent. Boundaries are when you have the zipper on the inside and you decide, under these circumstances, I will let you in. Under these circumstances, I will open this, or maybe I'll close it. So it's really about, what are you willing to put up with? What are you not willing to put up with? What do you want more of? What do you want less of? What will help you to feel safe? It's all those things that work for you. Now, boundaries can be negotiated. You can say, and they should be, you can say, I only want you to go to meetings twice a week because I want you home. You were never home before. And I may say, I need to go to meetings 3 days a week. And I may not have to negotiate that with you, but they can be flexible, but we're going to discuss it before we decide to change any of these boundaries. Really, they're kind of like rules. These are the rules for living with me. These are the rules for being involved with me. You can pick someone else, but if you're going to be involved with me, these are my rules. Kind of like that.
Okay, we've got 2 more questions on the old ones. So my question was marked answered, but wasn't answered. My partner accepted his
Sorry.
sex, love, and porn addiction 8 months ago and has been in very good recovery with a CSAT 12-step program, etc. I've seen huge changes for the better. Last week, he declared himself a liar and a cheater, but not an addict, because of not relating to the guys in meetings who are having a hard time staying sober, because he's read articles on the difference between just cheating and sex addiction and relates better to the definition of a cheater. Also, his CSAT and 12-step sponsor both fired
Oh.
him last week. By the way, he thinks cheater is worse than addict. I know that cheating was just one of many acting out behaviors related to his addiction, and that makes him a cheater and an addict. The question is, what is the best way for me to communicate to him that I think he is delusional and has a severe case of, I got this?
Well, I think this relates to the question above, right? What are your boundaries? If this person
Exactly.
that you love not is has said they're no longer an addict, has given up the addiction piece, has decided they can go it on their own because they don't really have a problem. In other words, if they decided to justify their behavior, that may be a boundary that's not okay with you. How are you going to handle it? What are you going to do for yourself and with them if they cross that boundary? I have to say, though, I don't know, but Tammy, I can read a little something into here, which is, I think I know what happened here, which is, he did something, I think it's a he did something that he was not supposed to do. He acted out, he, ran off the rails with some behavior, or he got angry at his sponsor, or whatever, and he got fired. He did something he shouldn't do. And his decision was not, I'm going to be accountable and accept this and work on it and value these relationships, see what I can learn here. His decision was, well, I don't want to deal with them, so I just don't have the problem. And I don't have to deal with these people or face them or be accountable to them if I don't have a problem. And so something happened here that made, and literally he is pushing away the truth. He is pushing away things he does not want to see, because if he did, he'd have to actually look at whatever it is that happened to get him fired. It's much easier to say, oh, I don't belong there and I have this terrible sponsor and this is awful. We call this externalizing the problem. I'm not the problem. It's my sponsor. It's my wife. It's my work. And while we're doing that, we never really have to look at ourselves. And by the way, we keep people running. Well, I say to my spouse, I wouldn't do this if I gaslight my spouse. I wouldn't do this if you were this, that, and the other thing. And you'll take that in and think, oh my God, they're doing it because this, that, and the other thing. I guarantee you this person's sponsor and who was the other person?
And
Um,
therapist.
yeah, I don't think that they're idiots. I think that they got shoved against the wall and they were getting shoved against the wall and they just got out of the way. So something is going on that you don't know about that has led to all of this. And it doesn't matter at some level because your boundaries are the same. So what are my boundaries? What are my non-negotiable boundaries if this person says, I don't have a problem? What is my boundary if they say I'm just cheating? What does that mean to you? You've been cheated on. Maybe it was 50 times, maybe it was 5, but you've still been cheated on. That's not like an excuse. Well, I'm just a cheater, or cheaters are worse. So I hear a lot of justifying, a lot of addict thinking. This would be a good person to take into seeking integrity. This is somebody who could use a little bit of treatment, who is not responding. You know, healing is a continuum. Like if I hurt my finger and I go to the doctor and they say, oh, well, that looks worse than you think. We think you need to go to this person, the specialist, and then we need to go to this person. And so in a way, and it's like that for us. You go to the 12-step group, you read the books, maybe you take a course, then you go to see a therapist. At a certain point, you need more help. At a certain point, doing all those things has not helped. And now you're rejecting that. To me, that's someone who needs to come visit us for a couple of weeks. But I would be, and I guess there's one more thing about this. I hear a lot about this other person, and I'm really concerned about you, meaning how are you dealing with this mess? What kind of support do you have? Are you getting help from people, from other men or women who are dealing with this? Do you have a CSAT or someone to support you? Because basically on another level, this person has smacked you across the face and they've left a bruise. And then 6 weeks later saying, oh, well, I don't think I smacked you. I think I just ran into you by accident. I don't really have an anger problem. And then you're going to get hit again. So how can you protect yourself from the direction that this is going in? Because we both know this is not going in the right direction.
Yeah, and I concur. You can't tell somebody who's delusional that they're delusional. They won't listen. So
Right.
it really is, what boundaries do you need to have for you? Okay, one more on the last week. So it's a little fuzzy, but I just sent that one to you. How can someone not be codependent if they have no sense of self? I understand your position and I need to read more about codependency, but I just started to accept after many years that I am codependent because I am unable to balance my life with relationship. What would you call it if someone seems to have no sense of self? Should they wait to get into a relationship until they feel like they have a sense of self, or just try to find a healthy attachment?
So Tammy, I want to understand from your perspective, what do they mean by sense of self? And yeah, can you
I,
maybe
I
frame the
think,
questions?
well, so to me, this is someone who loses themselves in another relationship. So they are feeling codependent because all of their relation it, so to me it's, we want to be interdependent, not completely dependent on another person and not completely independent. And so, but we can't go self-evolve all on our own. This is
Right.
a journey. We need other people so they can help guide us along the way. So to me, it would not be, I'm going to go self-actualize, sit on top of a mountain and figure it out. I would be going, I need to practice these skills with other people. If I feel like I am completely losing all sense of self in a relationship, then healthy boundaries. What do I need to do, to make sure that I'm taking care of me and not completely losing myself, but also not dominating someone else? So to me, it is absolutely, you need a posse of people to help you practice this stuff. And if you are an addict and have identified that you have struggled with that, then how we learn to do that is in community, and 12 step is a great place to practice. So
And I don't know if I saw therapist or support
I did
here.
not
I'm going to
I
answer.
did not see that, yeah. But it
And
was
by the way, for you
codependent versus
folks,
prodependence.
Tammy makes wonderful referrals. We've been doing this a long time. And so if you are looking for support, we don't get kickbacks. We just refer to people that we feel good about. Write Tammy, Tami, at seekingintegrity.com, and she will help you find a book or a resource. Or, I really appreciate that about you, Tammy. You give a lot of stuff away. And, but I do want to answer the question. I don't know what it means to have a sense of self in that way. I know what I like and what I don't like. I know when I feel good and I feel bad. I know when I am comfortable and when I'm not. To me, not losing yourself in a relationship has to do with having a life, not having a sense of self, but having a life. I have activities that I enjoy. I have friends I spend time with. If I didn't meet anyone at all, I would be enjoying my life. My life is defined by my friends, how I spend my time, my interests, my engage what is fun for me. It's defined by my work. And so I don't think you need to look very far about, your sense of self. It's defined by how you're living your life. And if you're living your life around having a relationship, or you give everything up about yourself when you're in the relationship, then I think you need to really sit down and practice, what does it mean for me to have a life? What is my life? And how do I hold on to it? I might go to a 12, what's a good way of saying this? Tammy, I know people who they were really good friends until they started dating and they disappeared altogether, and I didn't talk to them for a year. I think that's giving up yourself. I don't expect that we're going to be as close when you're dating 3 days a week, but I do expect that we're going to maintain that I'm part of your life. I'm part of your sense of self. You know what, little babies, just to say it, they don't know who they are. The way youngest among us learn who they are is by how other people respond to us. I may not know who I am, but if I'm hanging around people who I really enjoy, I'll probably feel good about myself. So part of what makes me who I am is who I spend my time with, what I do. So I don't think we're defined from the inside out. I think we're defined from the outside in. And if you hold on to those things on the outside, you will not get lost in a relationship. But it's when we say, well, I won't go to the gym anymore, and we're spending time together, I'm going to give that, and I don't have time to call so and so because we're going to dinner, and you will lose yourself because you lose the anchors of your life that are really in the day to day, and so, yeah, Tammy, do you want, I see nodding, which is good.
No,
What
I
are you
love it.
thinking?
No, I 100% agree. And I was like, I love that you say the anchors of our life. And I see that in too many relationships where it's now I'm in a pair bond and it's the
Right.
two of us. And unfortunately, when something unravels, like with sex addiction and betrayal trauma, it's just the two of you. You don't have the support, and you can't yet count on each other or find the support in each other. So I'm writing that one down too. I wrote down the other one, anchors in our life. Um, okay. So
I,
we
I
are
do want
going
to
to
say
go ahead.
one more
Go
quick thing
ahead.
about that. The question about, can I have a relationship if I don't have a sense of self? Well, I think people, if you're waiting for a certain psychological state of being to have a relationship, you'll never have one, because we always have another reason why, you know, uh, some of us avoid relationships. Some of
Mhm.
us long for intimacy, but it's also scary. And I can come up with a million reasons why I am not ready to be in a relationship. There's things wrong with me. I need to gain this ground until I'm ready. I agree with Tammy. I think that's one of the problems with codependency, is it basically says until you do this amount of self-exploration, self-examination, I'm not sure whether it's half a cup or a full cup or 2 cups, but when you get to that point, then you'll date the right people. Then you'll know how to do it. And I would
Mhm.
say it differently. I would say when you have anchors, thank you, Tammy, when your life is anchored in people you trust, activities you enjoy, if your self is defined out here, then you don't need to worry about who you meet or how because you will see if it's pulling away parts of your life, that's not the right relationship. So I don't know how filled up the cup has to be before you start dating, but I do know on the outside, you need to have a life that's working for you. And then let me say one more thing about that. The more solid my life is grounded in my enjoyment and my friendships, the less likely it is that I'm going to give it all up and lose myself in someone. And if I find myself losing myself in someone, they're probably not the right person, because someone who loves me would encourage me to, no, you spend that time with friends, and I want you to continue, we're going to singing groups, and they're going to, or maybe even join me. Let's do that hobby together. They're not going to pull me away. They're going to push me toward. Um, they're a foundation and a rock, but they're not the focus of my life. My focus of my life is all of those things. Thanks, Ken.
Yay, I love that. Okay, so now we're going to move to, I just put one in answered, and we're going to stay on. I hope Dr. Rob can say a couple extra minutes so we can get through more of these. And
Oh my gosh.
one of these days we have to catch up. Okay, my sister recently opened up to me about a trauma she had been keeping secret, and I feel so guilty because she says she can trust me. And thank you for being someone I can trust
Wait, Tammy,
100%.
you have to, even though we have a lot to do, you have to go a little slower. Sorry.
Okay. So the sister reached out because she feels like she can trust me 100%. I feel like a fake My partner's SA has weaseled its fingers into every aspect of our lives, one way or another. My day-to-day life revolves around recovery work, managing emotions and triggers, trying not to be a detective, etc. But I'm not ready to tell most people about all of this, including my sister. How do I show up authentically for the people in my life while hiding such a huge part of myself?
Well, there's a lot of questions in there, but I think I can speak to the last one, which is authentically means I don't pretend that I'm okay. I don't say, authentic also doesn't mean I'm going to tell you about every problem in my life in detail. I kind of think of it like circles. There's a center circle where there's certain people that I trust implicitly. I will tell them all about myself and everything that's going on. Then the next circle, I might say things like, I'm really struggling with some emotional issues. I've been going to therapy. I'm really working on myself. I really want to talk about it, but I've been very sad and troubled lately. So I'm authentic, but I'm not necessarily being in detail because I think I could say to my sister, I've just I thank you for telling me about your trauma and thank you for telling about your secret. And I so hope to be supportive of you. And I really care and love you, and I have issues too. So, I think when we open up and we acknowledge that we have stuff, that's vulnerability. It will make your sister feel better that she's not alone in talking about her problems, but you don't have to talk about the details. There are some people who need to know everything. You cannot be alone with the work with stuffs that we deal with. But there's another circle where, like I said, where that I've been having some problems. I'm really struggling. I don't know. And then there's the bigger circle, which is like people I work with. It's like I've been a little distracted lately, or I probably need some time off. Or you're right. I've been focused a lot on my partner. They need to know that things are a little off because you want to validate people's reality. That's being authentic because you're telling them the truth, but you don't need to tell everyone everything. And by the way, I agree with the sister part. I really worry about when we tell, it's not that we shouldn't tell family members, but just remember that if you're in a relationship with someone and then you're going to end up at the Thanksgiving table with them and your sister or your dad or your brother-in-law, they're always going to remember. You can't unsay things. So yeah, again, I think where is the circle of people where I feel safe and I know it's not going to come back to me? And again, I think this circle of friends is what Tammy's talking about, which is involving yourself in recovery. But Tammy, my partner's essay has weaseled its fingers into every. Can you tell me quite a little bit about how that fits in, or maybe we should just
Well,
move
I
on to the
think
next
it's just
question?
I think it's just because that's such a focus of my life, and I'm not telling my sister about any of it. So I feel like a fake because
Right,
my sister's sharing this trauma with me, and I'm not
right. That's
sharing
what I
with her.
thought.
So I think you've answered it really well. So
Great. Let's move on.
okay. So the next one, how do I let go of old PTSD? Do you think 12 steps is enough? I have tried EMDR and cognitive therapy, and they seem to just re-traumatize and make my sex addiction worse. So this is the addict. Can just work the steps over and over and look forward without re-traumatizing myself by going back over and over things and talking other therapies. So
Well, I don't know you, and so I can't speak specifically. First of all, PTSD on some level, trauma never goes away. It's not like you're going to do EMDR, you're going to have some kind of pill or even years of therapy, and you're going to get over the trauma. It's going to go away. We learn to live with it. We learn to adapt to it. We learn when there are signs of it and how to take care of ourselves. We learn how to turn down the volume on it so we know it's there, but it doesn't take up all of our attention. So I don't think there's ever letting go completely of that. I do believe that you should absolutely listen to what's happening, which is these therapies are not helping me. I get it. They're not. Don't go back. Um, I am really a big fan in getting the sex addiction piece down and really clarifying. So if I were going to see a therapist, I would acknowledge I have lots of trauma and that underlies a lot of my behaviors. And the good thing about acknowledging the trauma is it reduces some of the shame. I'm not a bad person. I'm not a terrible, I don't hate myself. I just have a lot of problems. But I think until you've really stabilized the addiction, built relationships around recovery, I don't hear much about how long they've been sober or how long they've been working on
well, it
this or
feels like this may, and we've talked about this before, people want to go work on the trauma and then they just keep
right,
getting triggered and acting out. And this
right.
kind of feels like that because it makes my sex addiction worse. So to me, that feels like, and then I'm acting out more.
So
So
the answer is maybe you're not ready to work on the trauma. You know, part of working on trauma creates instability inside of ourselves. And that's just, you're looking at difficult things and that makes you feel unstable. If you're not stable, if you're not stable enough to get through the day to day without serious, meaningful support and sobriety and consistency, then you're certainly not ready to unpeel all of that and unpack all of that, because many of the people I work with will act out if they drop a pencil. So the idea of really getting into meaningful therapy about the trauma and they get triggered acting out tells me that maybe their recovery is not stable enough. I also honestly, as a therapist, think about medication. It may be that there isn't enough internal stability that you can't either act out or look at trauma. And I'll say one more thing about that, Tammy, that we've talked about this, that one of the indicators to me of someone who needs to be in treatment at a treatment center, and I really mean this, is if they try to work on the trauma, they end up acting out. They can't work on the trauma because the addiction is so close. They stop acting out and then they get overwhelmed by the trauma. And some people need to be in a place where they're safe enough to work on both. And that has been my experience a lot, that people will come to treatment because they can't stop acting out, because looking at the underlying issues, they're just not stable enough. So, yeah, I think stabilizing recovery, perhaps going to a doc, looking at meds, considering whether you need to work on the trauma piece in a safer environment. There are lots of ways to look at this, but don't push yourself. If you're not doing well in a particular area, don't say, well, I got to get through that therapy. I got to find the right one that works for trauma. Put it down and say, I need to work on other parts of myself. Trauma work doesn't work unless you're stable inside already. And then it's a little teeny piece at a time. And Tammy and
Yes.
I both, this is when we talk about referring to the right therapist. There are a lot of therapists who think, well, when you deal with your trauma, you look at your trauma, then you're not going to act out, or it's not going to be as bad. Or I think it's the other way. I think you have to stabilize your life on every level and then go deeper into what's going on inside of you, because you will have that foundation of friendships, support, family, sobriety, and all the things that make it easier to begin to look at the past.
Okay, that was great. Next one. I'm having trouble healing because my husband, SA, has not shown true empathy. He's 7 months sober. He says all the right things, which he is getting from Help Per Heal workbook. He's going through independently, but there's no real empathy. How do I get unstuck?
Well, 7 months is very early. This is someone who's just begun their journey. And I understand from every spouse something like, after the way you've treated me, don't I deserve your respect, your empathy? Well, now you're in recovery. Aren't I a part of that? Aren't the way you treat me and the way how can you be in recovery if you still speak to me that way and all that stuff? In other words, if you're in recovery, why you're still a jerk? And, my response is that with a lot of support and help and direction, you can stop acting out and you can get sober. But being a better person, that takes time. And I don't think that addicts intentionally want to let us down or be unempathic. We simply don't know how. I do worry about someone who's reading a workbook and not taking a course. I think being involved with someone who's doing training, this is why we teach out of the doghouse, because lots of people ask questions. And I worry about anyone who's doing a workbook independently, because they need feedback. They need to look at their homework with other people. They need to ask questions, and I think that that's why we did it out of the doghouse course, is because as much people liked reading the book, it didn't really help them in the details of how to do the work. I don't think I understood what empathy was in the beginning. And I think a lot of it too, and I don't know if this makes sense to you guys, is that I didn't have any empathy for myself. I had no compassion for what I'd put myself through. I didn't understand how I'd grown up. I didn't understand, as a family member of mine said, you never had a chance. You were never going to be healthy. And rather than hating myself for my addiction, I had to come to real peace with how broken I was. And as the empathy for myself started to show up, then I could have more empathy for you. And yeah, it's okay to imitate empathy. If someone says the right thing and they do the right thing, I don't really care why. I just want them to do and say the right thing. But innate empathy is not something we're good at. It's something that takes time and practice. And by the same with narcissism, oh my God, he's still so narcissistic. Narcissism is a lifelong challenge. Tammy knows I often say and do things that are very narcissistic, and I've worked on it for a long time. Um, don't nod quite
No,
so
you've
much,
worked on
Tammy.
it quite a long time.
No,
I was
I was like,
nodding
yes,
it.
he is.
No, I was
Um,
like, you've worked on it. You have. So,
But the point of it is that I will always be unempathic. That's just how I'm built. But when I realize it, when I see it, when I immediately want to go in and say, make a 10th step. I'm sorry, I didn't realize I did that. I will do things that are unempathic. I will let people down, and probably more than other people because I'm kind of broken. But the key is, can I learn about when that's happening? Can I learn how to do it differently? And 7 months is very early. I think remorse, I feel shitty about what I did. I wish I'd done it differently. That is achievable pretty early. But an understanding of how you have been affected, that can take a long time. And by the way, that's one of the first things we do in treatment is we read a letter from the partner that says, this is what I've been through. And then the guys we work with say, oh my gosh, why haven't I done that? I've heard that so many times. And my answer is, why weren't you listening? So empathy is a process. It doesn't just happen. Sobriety is the first step toward empathy. Tammy, I have an empathic request of you. I
Yes,
think if we carry over the questions from the week before, we are never going to get the question and answer from the people who actually show up this week.
I
And so
know.
maybe we should renegotiate that because I feel badly
I
for those
know.
folks who are
Yes,
here.
yes, I agree. So hang on. I want to touch on this thing. Can we answer one more? Because
Of
it's
course.
okay. All right. So I want to go to the how do I get unstuck? You're not stuck. You're in the process. You're not stuck. You're moving through it, but you're still really early in the process. Dr. Rob has talked before, that when you have discovery, you're at day zero. Your addict has known all along that they were acting out and doing all of this. So it's different. If they're really doing active recovery work, and I agree with what Dr. Rob said about, like, I don't hear a whole lot of other stuff, but so understand that your process of seeing his actions, having him work on rebuilding trust, that can take you 18 months or more. So I don't think you're stuck. I think you are doing what you need
You're
to
in
do. You're
process.
here. Yeah, in process is a much better way of it. So give yourself some grace from that standpoint.
And I
Okay.
do want to respect that partners, you've put up with so much stuff that when you finally found out and you see us working on it, now it's like, well, what about me? When is it my turn after you've looked out for yourself for so long? And that is a very reasonable request. It's just that we may not be able to do it yet or understand what that means. So
Oh, okay. The next one, and it'll be the
go
last for
ahead.
tonight. I'm going to
It's
quick
okay.
scan them
It's
though.
okay. My dog will
I,
wait for dinner. It's fine. I'll
There
tell
you
him
go.
Tammy made
Me
me
too.
wait.
You can do that. Dozer will forgive me. I've been sober from sexual addiction, acting out with prostitutes for over a year. I'm using harm reduction by allowing porn, but whenever I use it, I feel like a fake claiming my sobriety, though my 12-step program allows me to define my sobriety. I want to start moving away from porn, which I've been using for 30 years. How do I wean myself off of porn?
There is no weaning yourself off of porn. You stop and you get the support for stopping. And I think harm reduction is a lie to yourself. It's more like, well, how can I give myself permission to keep doing this and not make it bad? Part of the thing that we look in treatment, I think this is often happens, is people say, oh, well, that's the problem. It's cheating on my wife, or that's the problem. It's, calling ex-boyfriends or whatever it is. And they don't see that the whole thing is a problem. Dating, relationships, affairs, sex workers, porn. You can't say, well, seeing prostitutes was the problem, but porn wasn't. It's all the problem. It's about your sexual life and how you lead your sexual life. So what you've done is split hairs. To me, what you said is, tell me like this. I used to drink whiskey and that was really a problem. So I just drink wine now because it's not nearly as high in alcohol content, but you're still drinking. And your inside is telling you, I want to move away from this. The question is, what are you doing? No 12-step program, by the way, none of them, and I've spent 30 years in programs, says you can define your own sobriety. They say you can define your own sobriety with another person. You sit down with a sponsor, you sit down with a therapist or your clergy person, and you say, what do you think about these behaviors? And are they okay and not okay? And then you talk about and explain them. And then together you decide what is healthy for you. And I think less in the beginning is probably better than more at the beginning. In other words, don't give yourself so much permission to do whatever you feel like doing. You've already learned that mistake. Hey, you've learned the mistake. Porn doesn't work and you thought it did. Now you need to sit down with someone. I wonder what other behaviors you have made okay with yourself that are not okay for you. And I do want to say the last thing, which is If you're not an alcoholic, you can drink as much as you want. You can, get drunk once in a while. None of my business. If you're not a sex addict, you can look at porn, you can go to strip clubs on the bachelor party, you can do whatever you want. But if you are a sex addict, there are limitations around your behavior that other people don't have. And especially at the beginning, it's much more important for us to really put a tight boundary on what we can and can't do. And I don't think doing it by yourself is such a great idea. By the way, I can always find someone in a 12-step program, always, to agree with my point of view. I can always find someone, well, I don't understand, and porn isn't a problem. And you'll find 5 people who will agree with you. But it's looking for people who will tell you the hard truth that you don't want to hear. Those are the ones that I want to be around. Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you. Okay, so bring your questions. Thank you all for being here. Bring your questions next week. We'll start fresh. I'm not taking pictures of any of them. If between now and then you have
Right.
questions, email me or visit any of the other webinars, Dr. David. We have a special edition one with Eddie Caparucci on Wednesday with Drew Boa. So we've been promoting that. So check it out. So come
Free.
visit. Yes, all free.
Or even better, be really early next week. Put your question in first. Bring it to next week, and we will talk about it next week.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Rob.
Thanks, Tammy. Good to see you.
Sorry for keeping him from dinner. Bye.